a lot of radiographers don't have an active LinkedIn profile because we think it's different within health. You know, it's not so much for corporate, like networking type of industry, but you realize very quickly that that's how the world is right now.
In a hospital setting, my experience and from what I've been told, it's a bit more difficult to get into that. Sometimes you're in waiting lists that could be up to a few years.
Oh, yeah.
So how come you got CT training so early?
So it's multifactorial. Like you said, most radiographers will expect to wait a couple of years, particularly in a public hospital system, to get CT trained. You have to sort of do the hard yards in X-ray first.
How did you have a competitive advantage applying for a place that you didn't have placement at, and how did you differentiate yourself to get that position?
I think Sydney University's course really sets you up for success in that sense. You can't really set yourself apart in terms of your skill at that point because you don't have the work experience unless you've been a rad assist or you've had some kind of radiology casual job during university.
Whether you like it or not, if you're applying for a position, they're going to look you up online.
Yeah, at the time, of course, which, you know, I say at the time, but it was really just 6 years ago. It's
Back in our day.
Yeah.
So who am I here with today and what is your current role?
I'm Sondra, and for those watching, a little bit of context is Sahand and I were classmates. We went to Sydney Uni together. We did the graduate entry master's program, and we were just talking. It's crazy that nearly half a decade later, here we are. Who would have thought?
Yeah. Half a decade, wow, that's a long time.
I know, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy. You look the same, by the way.
You look the same as well. Yeah.
But as for me, I'm an application specialist now in the advanced therapies team at Siemens Healthineers. I've been in this role for nearly a year now, and before this, I was working clinically as a radiographer, both in the public and private sector for nearly 5 years. And I'm really enjoying this journey now from clinical to industry.
Cool. And so how many years did you do radiography, and then sort of what led you to this role of application specialist?
So I was doing radiography for about 5 years, and you know, I'm sure every radiographer can relate. It does get a little bit repetitive after a while, and you know, to keep things interesting and to keep myself stimulated, I did a variety of different roles at different places and upskilled as I went. And finally I hit a ceiling and I thought, is that what I want to continue doing, or if I want to try something different? And that's sort of what precipitated the move to corporate health.
Right, okay. So yeah, you kind of maxed out your clinical experience and you wanted to sort of grow into a little bit more. Sticking to the clinical side, what areas of radiography did you work in? I know there's a bunch of different areas that graduates can get into. Can you give you a flavor of that?
Yeah, sure. So the start of my career, I got a graduate program at Northern Beaches Hospital. I was very fortunate the hospital had just opened up at the time. So I was really only 6 months into opening, and as a result, I got upskilled very, very quickly. I got CT trained within 6 months, and you know, being a hospital, we also had a 24-hour emergency service. So I had exposure to trauma imaging as well very quickly. And in a hospital environment, it's pretty dynamic. You have to be very flexible, adaptable across different roles, different modalities. So that was probably my most, I would say, the steepest learning experience. And to get more into it for your question, so what areas of radiography? Of course, there's X-ray, both inpatient, outpatient as well. So trauma imaging, of course, involves modification of techniques. So it's a little bit different to sort of outpatient private practice radiography. CT, that includes interventional procedures, contrast, non-contrast scans, biopsies and so on. Dental imaging, OPGs, TMJs, cone beam CT, fluoroscopy procedures, theater imaging. So it can be quite varied.
Yeah, that's a lot basically. And for someone that isn't really familiar with these terms, first of all, what's an inpatient versus outpatient? And then you mentioned a bunch of different things in interventional and cone beam. What's all that, if you had to explain that to a beginner?
Yeah, so they're all a variety of different imaging technologies. Each one is catered to what condition you're looking for. So to answer your question one by one, so did you say cone beam?
Well, the inpatient versus outpatient. Probably most people know that, but I remember initially I had no idea what that meant.
Oh, absolutely. I would have no clue either. Yeah. So inpatient refers to patients that are admitted in hospital. So they're usually from the ward. And they will often come down to the main department or the radiology department or the medical imaging department, all interchangeable terms, to have their scanning or imaging done. outpatient is someone that will walk into a private practice, or sometimes even in hospital settings, they allow for outpatients to come in and get their imaging done. So inpatients are patients that are admitted in hospital. Outpatients are patients that are out in the community that come to have imaging done.
Yeah, and they ultimately come to the same area. It's just whether they're staying in the hospital or they're not.
That's right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. And with regards to the different modalities, you mentioned you got CT training pretty quickly within 6 months. Now, depending on the site, I think that's relatively rare. I remember I started in a private practice, so that was pretty common. It was just like me and someone else. There was X-ray and CT, and you were expected to just know that and learn that. In a hospital setting, my experience and from what I've been told, it's a bit more difficult to get into that. Sometimes you're in waiting lists that could be up to a few years.
Oh, yeah.
So how come you got CT training so early?
So it's multifactorial. Like you said, most radiographers will expect to wait a couple of years, particularly in a public hospital system, to get CT trained. You have to sort of do the hard yards in X-ray first. And I think generally that's a good system, because once you're sort of comfortable with your sectional anatomy, then you can sort of proceed to more advanced modalities. But in my case, I was really fortunate. The hospital was only 6 months old at the time when I joined, so they needed everyone upskilled very quickly.
Yeah.
And able to function independently in department and have everyone at a good level. Particularly given the sort of influx of patients that we had in the area. You know, Mandy and Mona Vale Hospital got consolidated into Northern Beaches, so we had a steady flow of patients nearly every day, and it only kept increasing. And then, of course, you just need to be able to sort of withstand the pressures of radiography, because it's so dynamic and you have to be flexible across modalities. So yeah, I think that's probably why I got the opportunity to be upskilled so quickly in CT. But don't get me wrong, it wasn't like everything happened in a span of 1 month. You know, with radiography, as just like with anything in life, it's a learning process. So it just kept developing skills every day.
And do you think this is well, first of all, was this your last clinical placement site that then you got a job in, or did you apply for this separately?
No, it wasn't part of my placements. It's something I applied for independently. At the time, HIS, Healthcare Imaging Services, which is now Loomis.
Yep.
At the time, they were the second largest imaging provider in Australia. And so invariably, we've all had exposure to one of their sites, whether it's through placement or hearing about it. You work for Loomis as well?
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Still there to
Loomis
this day.
represent.
Yeah, yeah. Who's the first out of interest?
I'm pretty sure it's IMED.
IMED, yeah. Okay,
Yeah.
cool.
They might have changed now, actually, but last time I checked, it was IMED.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, I really wanted to be a part of a bigger company that had reach.
Yeah.
And then, of course, also the opportunity to move between sites if need be. But Northern Beaches was quite unique in its setup, because it was a private practice operating within a hospital. So there were two separate companies. The hospital was operated by HealthScope, and then Loomis was contracted to run radiology.
How did you have a competitive advantage applying for a place that you didn't have placement at, because they don't really know who you are? Generally, how graduate jobs work is your last placement is your 6-week interview, essentially, or like a 9-week interview. And so how did you position yourself to apply for a place that didn't have you as their placement site? And how did you differentiate yourself to get that position?
It's really hard. Especially when you're a new grad and you don't really have any work experience in the field under your belt. It's definitely very challenging. So don't be disheartened if you get knocked back. That's probably the number one thing. But in terms of how I differentiated myself, I think Sydney University's course really sets you up for success in that sense, because we have exposure to both public and private. We get hospital placements as well as private practice placements. And so we get a good, well-rounded understanding of how the healthcare system works in both sectors. So I'm pretty grateful to the university for how they've set up the course, because that really helped me position myself as a worthy candidate for the role. And then apart from that, I think it's really communication at that point, because nearly everyone's in the same boat. You can't really set yourself apart in terms of your skill at that point, because you don't have the work experience unless you've been a rad assist or you've had some kind of radiology casual job during university. But I still think that if you communicate well and if you position yourself as a good candidate that's eager to learn and willing to work hard, then I think you put yourself in a good stead. Yeah.
Did you approach the chief or the manager of the hospital yourself in person, or did you just submit your resume and cover letter, and then you talk to them once they got back to you? What did that look like?
So they were actively advertising for roles,
Yeah.
but at the time they were not advertising for new grad positions. I spoke to a couple of colleagues within our course, won't name names,
Yeah.
but they gave me a heads up that the hospital potentially was looking at hiring new grads as well down the line. So I put my resume in just in case. And I'm not sure if things are different now, but we had the cover letter and the resume format. It was very old school.
Yeah.
So everything was nicely packaged up. And then I had to continue chasing them actually because they weren't advertising for new grads. So in order for me to sort of have a better understanding of whether or not I actually got the role, I had to keep chasing them up. And I think that probably put me in a better position.
Yeah, I think chasing them up is certainly still the tactic. I think probably what's changed from when we applied is, resumes and cover letters were the gold standard. I think they still are to some level, but I think, at least on my experience, is that LinkedIn is the way to go. Like, that is your online resume. Whether you like it or not, if you're applying for a position, they're going to look you up online. Like, that's the reality of it. Okay, and they may not say they will do that, but it's in human nature to do that. And so when you type in your name, one of your LinkedIn profiles is probably one of the first things that comes up. And if you have established yourself there, well, you have your profile, you have your experience in other areas, that is your digital resume. Then you can give a paper as well, but that's how you can differentiate yourself in this day and age.
Just to add to that really quickly as well. At the time, of course, which I say at the time, but it was really just 6 years ago. It's
Back in our day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's crazy to think that things have changed so much, but yeah, absolutely. I think you need to have your LinkedIn up to scratch. Even until I would say 3 or 4 years ago, and even now, a lot of radiographers don't have an active LinkedIn profile because we think it's different within health. It's not so much for corporate, like networking type of industry. But you realize very quickly that that's how the world is right now. It's really important to have your name out there and your work experience, your skill set, and also obviously having to network and things helps you with your pathways outside of radiography later on.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think you're right.
I think another big thing is that like some people have a LinkedIn page, but they don't have a photo. Now I understand some people don't want to put a photo for privacy reasons or whatever, but what I found is at least in any year group, there's about 60 to 80 to 100 students. That's every year. Okay. How do you differentiate yourself if especially people on average are not good at remembering names and faces? Okay. So if you see a name, you need a face. If you see a face, you need a name to like put them together. And that's why the LinkedIn thing is so powerful. I've had so many opportunities myself, but because I've been posting a lot, I'm trying to post a lot, I get opportunities thrown at me because my page is, growing and I'm sort of sharing things out there. So job opportunities get thrown at me, whereas back in the day, that was definitely not a thing. So I feel like to give further advice on the LinkedIn thing is have a photo, because if someone sees your name or maybe they had you on placement, they'll remember you, but they'll need a face to remember it again. That really refreshes the memory. And that's what's, I think, going to give you a competitive advantage if you're applying, to say, oh, okay, that's Sonja. That's what she looked at. Oh, I remember everything about her because I just saw her face. So that's a differentiating factor, which I feel like not many people are taking seriously yet. But I have a sneaking suspicion they will in the near future.
Now.
Yeah, interesting.
I think it's also really important to develop connections from the sites that you've done your placement at. Even if you may not have necessarily loved your placement there for whatever reason, radiography is a very, very small world. It's very interconnected. Everyone knows everyone somehow, even interstate. So I think it's really important that you have a good reputation built at the site that you're doing your placement at, not just because you're reflecting the university, but also just your personal brand for later on in life. So, even if you have a good relationship with one of your chiefs or mentors on site, they can put in a good word for you later on, even if you don't necessarily want a job there. They oftentimes, with a lot of the imaging providers, they have sites everywhere. So one person vouching for you, like in the sense that they've observed you during placement, I think it would go a long way.
Yeah, and that also again comes with human nature. If you think of anything that you were on the fence about, let's say buying, you can look at all the the feedback and reviews that people put online, but all it takes is your friend to say, yeah, I got that and it was really good, and then you're all of a sudden over
Yeah.
the fence. Same idea with hiring. Okay, someone can look at a perfect resume, but until that someone that they know says, oh, this person's really good, like you don't want to miss out on this, that's when they'll go over. And
Absolutely.
so absolutely, I always say treat your placements as interviews. Okay, now it's probably unlikely that you'll get a job from your first or second placement, but that connection still rolls on, and you can use them as references for later on. So,
and I think most people end up getting hired at one of their placement sites, right?
That's what I did.
Yeah.
Still there to this day. Yeah. So,
Must have really loved your placement.
they loved me too much.